Yeah, snow and ice. The event, he got back there. Now he had some barber training, so that was sort of his occupation most of the time, was just cutting hair, right? So he was able to.
Hence the name Scherer.
No, that was that's a Scherer style. This is
Yeah.
Schieferstein.
But the Scherer and the Schieferstein, they were. Oh, okay.
Schieferstein means like slate stone. Or
Oh,
something
okay.
Like that.
Sorry.
But anyway, so he did land a job as a barber in Klamath Falls, and later that year, on August 28th in 1929, was when his daughter was born. So they just had made it out that same year, and then our mom was born on August 28th, 1929. And then 1 week later, which was September 4th, I looked that up, the stock market crashed. And my mom used to always joke that she brought in the Great Depression. I don't know if it's true or not, but timing was good. So they hung around in Klamath Falls as long as they could, but then things started getting worse. And then eventually he lost his job there. I mean, people just weren't cutting hair anymore because they couldn't afford it. They were just growing out or doing it themselves. So he lost his job as a barber, and then he lost the house. And at this point, I don't know what happened to the Whippet, but they didn't have it. But somehow their grandfather, I guess, bought him an old jalopy Dodge and said, you know, at this point, I think they had moved out somewhere else. And so he learned of a barber shop opening in Reedsport, Oregon, which is on the coast of Oregon. And so they decided they were going to head out there, and he was going to see if he could get that barber job. So they went out got back in the car, made a long, arduous journey to get out there. Had no place to live. They brought a tent with them so they could pitch a tent, and so that's what they did. They pitched along the, I guess it's called the Umpqua River or something like that. Umpqua? Yeah. So Mom was 4 years old now, and so the whole family is just living in a tent on this riverbank. And they were able to strike a deal with a couple of guys that I guess had an old broken down houseboat on the river. And they were living in the houseboat. Didn't know how to cook, I guess, but they had a kitchen. So they struck a deal, and they also had a little running water tap down there. And so they struck a deal with them and said, hey, if you guys can come down and get water, we'll give you that water, and we'll give you the kitchen if you want to use it in exchange for you guys cooking a meal for us. So that's what they did. And so they would, you know, her mother would cook for them, and they let them get the water and use the kitchen, and they lived in the tent. It didn't turn out to be such a good move because there's only like 400 people in town, so there wasn't a whole lot of haircuts going on. Guess you didn't really know about that part of the story. So after a month of living on the bank, and again, he was still out of money with no hope in sight. So his wife, my grandmother, my mom's mother, who was Methodist, had known this Methodist minister who had moved to Grants Pass. And so she wrote him a letter and just explained their predicament. I mean, they were broke, he was a barber, and at any rate, a few days later, I guess, or whatever amount of time went by, they got a response from him, and he said that there was an opening for a barber down in Grants Pass at a hotel. If they could get down to here, he could line them up with the job. So back in the Dodge, I guess, and then headed down to Grants Pass. And he landed in Grants Pass, got the job doing the hair cutting, barber job in Grants Pass. And then again, they arrived with no money, and so when for the first month or so, they lived in the tent in Grants Pass again while he worked. And then he made up enough money, I think he made like $6 or something like that at the time for the month, and it was enough to go ahead and rent a place for the next month. So they found a place they could rent, and they all got out of the tent and moved in and rented the house. So he kept, and that was on a street called 10th Street. And so as it turns out, he kept working hard, and made some money, and eventually bought land, about 5 acres, I think, is how I was saying, on 10th Street. And I guess I had an old house on it or something. This is probably a little sketchy for me because he built one. So he was able to actually eventually build a house, and I think he moved into the one on 10th, right, Dad? Did he build that house on 10th Street?
He did. Two-story?
Yeah.
He built that.
He built
Yeah,
that one.
right.
Okay, so he lived like,
It's still there today.
yeah, still there today. Yeah.
That's the white two-story?
Right. Yeah, white or gray. I don't know.
Yeah.
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 Actually, Claudia said she just went down there and went through it, and the lady let her go through it. And she remembers it vividly, and I guess they've changed it up. And, yeah, but it's really nice still.
So he was able then to build his house, and then eventually the hotel barber where he was working, he was able to leave that and start his own barber shop. So at that point, he had his own house, his property, and a barber shop, and they were sort of settled now into Grants Pass. And so that's where my mom grew up. She graduated from Grants Pass High School. I think just based on the age, we think it was 1947 when she graduated. She was raised in a very musical family. Her grandfather, back in Rapid City, had started an orchestra back there, and I guess it's still in existence today. And her father played the violin. Her mother was musically gifted as well. She played the piano, and then ended up playing the piano for the Methodist Church for a lot of years there in Grants Pass.
And gave piano lessons.
Oh yeah, she gave piano lessons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a. You guys have what's that? You guys saw the piano, right, with the bowl hole inside?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got that one. So they had a couple pianos, and they had a really nice piano. And I guess one day someone was cleaning some guns, some friends over, and it went over and blew a big hole in the side of the piano, and there's still lodged a bullet in it, I guess. But it's over there at Matthews now. Yeah.